Hi, everybody, and thanks, Heather, and thank you, Brian, for that wonderful introduction to the next generation science standards. I wish I'd seen that talk before I had to dive headfirst into them to work on this project when we were first in production a few years ago. So I'm really here to talk with you all today about climate education for the youngest learners, kids who are kindergarten through about second or third grade. In a nutshell, with kids that young, we don't really talk about climate change, but instead what we focus on is really establishing a foundation for them to develop climate literacy and to be prepared to learn some of the more sophisticated science concepts later on that they'll be learning in middle school and high school, as Brian just showed you. We do this with these young kids by really heightening their awareness of the world around them, of the world they live in, and how it works. Broadly, we really try to help them start learning how ecosystems work. And we want them to understand at this age how plants and animals and people all function in the world around them and how they respond to changes in the environment, how they respond to changes in the seasons, in temperature. And those are things that are very, very natural for kids at this age to start building that awareness of. And so here at WGBH, I work on a fairly new digital web series out of our children's production group. It's called Plum Landing. And Plum Landing is a collection of resources, videos, games, a couple of iPhone apps that are all meant to engage kids and their families and educators with nature and the world around them. And I know sometimes to some audiences that I speak to, it can seem like the height of irony to talk about developing digital media to get kids outdoors and to combat nature deficit disorder. But we are very aware that kids today more and more are on digital devices for more of the day. And so we really thought, what if we were to turn this challenge on its head? And instead of trying to get kids off of their devices entirely, come at them where they are on digital media and engage them in stories and activities about the world around them. And then encourage them to head outdoors, sometimes with those devices worked into their exploration, and sometimes just putting them down for a while and really getting muddy and dirty and connecting with the world around them. As an aside, I also wanted to just give a nod to Richard Loeb's book, Last Child in the Woods. When Plum Landing was in its early phases of development, that book was really an inspiration for us. And we really take to heart his message that if we're going to create a new generation of kids who are committed to making change for the better, we need to start really young and give them these foundational experiences in the environment with adults who take them out and really have meaningful experiences. And this is what we're trying to achieve with our Plum Landing project. And with that, I think I'll play a video that introduces you to the breadth of resources that you'll find in Plum Landing, and then we'll move on from there.
Kids love learning about the world around them. Who better to inspire them than an animated alien named Plum?
Howdy! Welcome to Plum Landing! Woohoo!
A digital adventure at pbskids.org with free games, apps, videos, and hands-on science activities, encouraging kids to explore the natural world in a whole new way.
You're number 3.
Awesome. So who's Plum? Well, she's a video game designer from Blorb, a far-off planet that has no trees, no mountains, no lakes, nothing. Curious to learn more about nature, Plum flies to Earth and befriends 5 adventurous kids.
Your mission is to find a lake?
Their mission? Help Plum and kids at home learn more about planet Earth. From rafting through a mangrove swamp, to tracking a thorny devil across the Australian desert, to going face-to-face with a manatee. Every animated webisode, game, and activity is designed to teach 6 to 9-year-olds about Earth's ecosystems and get them pumped up about their role as caretakers of the planet. With live-action videos, Plum encourages kids to investigate their own worlds too, by observing, exploring, asking questions, and gathering data. Kids can even take photos, describe what they found, and feed it back to Plum through a free mobile app. And there's more. Plum Landing's unique digital curriculum offers standards-based environmental science resources to help educators extend the learning at after-school programs, camps, museums, and public television events. The adventure begins at pbskids.org/plumlanding. Make friends with a curious purple alien and start exploring your world, one mission at a time.
Great. So with the time that I have left up here, I thought we could take a deeper dive into the digital elements that make up our website, both for kids and for educators, and go a little bit into the story of Plum and how we've woven it into our curriculum. So what you're looking at here is our homepage, part of our homepage. When kids come to our site, they can freely explore between different types of digital media. We have animations, videos, like you saw in the video that I just showed you. We know from an education perspective that if we really want kids to understand a concept, that they need to have multiple experiences with that idea, not just one encounter. So we've tried to encapsulate that in our program by giving them multiple ways of exploring different themes. So for example, on Plum Landing, a child may come to our site and watch an animation about animal habitats, and then play an interactive online game also about habitats, then head outdoors for a hands-on outdoor activity facilitated by an educator or with their parents. And they're getting multiple exposures to that theme in different contexts and learning a deeper understanding of these concepts. So as you just saw in the video, Plum and her friends go on missions to explore ecosystems around the world. In the current iteration of Plum Landing, they explore a rainforest in Borneo, a mangrove swamp in Belize, the Rocky Mountain ecosystem out west, and a desert in Australia. These are all faraway places. And the role of our curriculum really is to help kids make a direct connection between those faraway places and where they live right here. And so what we've done in our curriculum, I'll walk through a few examples of this for you, is to take concepts that kids are seeing in these faraway places and then to go explore them right in their backyard. So for example, in our video collection about the rainforest in Borneo, kids will be learning about biodiversity. We've all learned, rainforests are very high in biodiversity. Well, guess what? Your backyard has biodiversity too. So our curriculum intentionally pairs a hands-on activity that takes kids outdoors to explore biodiversity in their schoolyard with that video, with the real intent being to show kids that biodiversity and animal habitats and ecosystems exist right where they live, even in a city that looks like it's paved over with concrete. And that's one way that we try to really get them to connect with the world around them. So I'm going to move ahead here to our curriculum pathways. These are this is now a website that we've created for educators. This is where we've collected all of our resource into pre-planned curriculum that aligns our digital resources into stories that follow a narrative arc that pair together our digital resources with hands-on activities, depending on the length of time that educators have with kids. What you're seeing right here, the thumbnails at the bottom of the screen, are 4 different camp pathways. These are prepackaged sets of media resources that provide a week of instruction for teachers in 3-hour blocks of programming. This is intended for like a vacation week camp or other type of a setting where teachers have a pretty long chunk of time with kids. The pathways that you see above that, club and after school, are for shorter blocks of time. So what I'm going to do now is show you what the first pathway looks like when you go over to the next page. And what you see here is a series of thumbnails. And this is where the digital curriculum lays out its storyline for kids to follow. Each pathway follows a narrative arc, and it begins with a short animation that takes kids on an adventure to some ecosystem and then moves them outdoors for a related hands-on activity. And this plays out for each day of the curriculum. You'll see here days 1 and 2 are what I'm showing for you. Day 1 of this pathway has kids watch a short video about the desert. They go outside and do an activity about evaporation. The next day, they do a similar video, and then they move on to do an activity about structure and function relationships in plants, and learn about adaptation. What I'll do now is show you just a little bit of what these digital resources look like, and talk about how we use these then in our digital program, in our curriculum. And this, just so you can see it, is what an educator page looks like. We've built in some additional scaffolding here. We have the NGSS Standards off on the side, and we have provided some scaffolding for teachers, additional activities that they can do connected with the video. Oops. Okay. So this, thinking back to that thumbnail, is the first video.
Hang on. Doesn't that look like a shoreline? And see how the ground is curved? So maybe this was a lake. Or it will be in the future? Let's try the time speeder! Okay, here goes. It's day. It's night. It's day. It's night. It's working. It's really speeding up time. Whoa. This is awesome. That better not be thunder. Ah! You know, I am liking this plink. Look, I was right. There's our lake. You know, I think I read somewhere that it almost never rains in the desert. But when it does, it can flood. The desert is a completely different place after it rains. Amazing. Hey, are those birds? Can I see the plink? It's a pelican, and he's eating fish and shrimp. How did they get into the lake? It was just sand a while ago. Guys, I think the lake is evaporating. It's whatting? Evaporating. It's when energy from the sun makes water molecules bounce into the air. When enough molecules get bounced away, there's no more water. We had it on a science test. Hey, look! Day 90! We lived through 90 days in just 2 minutes! So in a couple of months, an entire lake can come and go. That's just... wow. Let's take a picture so we can prove we found it. Yahoo! Calling Plum, calling Plum. Come in, Plum. Mission accomplished.
So one of the reasons I chose to share that particular animation with you is I love the science process skills the kids are animating in this adventure. It's showing the kids who are watching this the activities of science exploration through storytelling, through this narrative. At the beginning of this animation, which I clipped in the interest of time, Plum sends the kids on a mission to find a lake in the middle of a desert. So this is really all about them looking for the evidence that there was once a lake here and explaining how that could possibly be, and then seeing what happens to that particular environment when it rains and the water comes in and the environment changes. So there's some of the groundwork right there that we're trying to lay for kids to, develop their later climate literacy. After watching this animation in our curriculum, this video is intentionally paired with an activity that then takes kids outside to look at evaporation and how evaporation happens right in their own neighborhood. So I'll share that with you now.
I'm going to do an experiment to show what happens when water evaporates. I'm going to make a handprint on a piece of construction paper and put that one in the sun, and then I'm going to make another handprint and put that in a plastic bag. Now we're just gonna wait to see what the sun does. It's been about 5 minutes, and the one that was just in the sun, the water's just gone. It's already been evaporated. The one in the plastic bag, I see little water droplets on the plastic bag. It's almost as though the water vapor has been caught in a net that's the plastic bag.
I'm comparing 2 different surfaces. I'm going to paint water on metal and cement. The metal feels warmer to me. The water on the metals seems to evaporate faster. Maybe it's hotter. I am painting a sun in the sun and a sun in the shade. And I'm going to see which one evaporates faster. It's been about 5 minutes and the one in the sun is almost gone. But the one in the shade is still as wet as ever. Now it's been 10 minutes and the one in the sun has now totally evaporated. But the one in the shade is still trying to evaporate. I think that the heat has something to do with this because it's cooler in the shade and the one in the shade isn't evaporating as fast as the one in the sun.
So again, we're seeing some great modeling of science process skills. There's observation, making comparisons, using evidence to support an explanation. I also like in this activity that kids are also making connections between environmental factors such as sunlight, shade, temperature, and the process of evaporation and what affects the rate at which evaporation occurs. I'd like to think that, down the road when kids start learning about human impacts on the environment, they might learn about the urban heat island effect. Maybe they would think back to this experience, seeing an activity or having done an activity like this, and apply that kind of connection and have a deeper understanding of how that works. So these are one type of our digital media. This is one part of our digital curriculum. We also really do enjoy putting kids in charge of creating their own content and building some of their own understanding. And to that end, in Plum Landing, we've also produced several interactive apps for digital devices. We have 2 different apps for the iPhone that work with the camera. And we also have a digital badging feature, and I'll talk about those really briefly right now. So this is the iPhone app that we've produced. It's one of them. It's called Plum's Photo Hunt. And what Plum's Photo Hunt does, it sends kids on missions outdoors to take photographs of any of the things that are in the list up here, such as trees, patterns in nature, unusual weather, those sorts of things. This is something kids can do on their own and take a photograph. And when they take a photograph, you'll see on the right-hand slide, kids are also prompted to reflect a little bit on the picture and talk a little bit about why they took it, what they thought was interesting about it, and then they can share it with us for publication on our website on pbskids.org. We've also produced a digital badging feature on our website. We've learned that more and more people are talking about digital badging as a means of engagement and sustaining interest in a program, and so we've used this also as a means of getting kids exploring the outdoors. What I like about both of these resources is that it's asking kids to not just go and take a photograph or go and make a drawing, but to talk about why they did it and what they're trying to explain with that image that they've created. So, if you've taken a picture of unusual weather, what might have caused that weather? Or how might this weather be affecting something that lives in your habitat? And now I think what I'll do is share with you some of the photographs and images that kids have been sending to us from these two features. I think this is a great way of showing how kids are not just engaging with these resources, but they're also beginning to learn some of the ideas about climate literacy and ecosystem science that we're hoping that they are learning. So here's one. This is a mission to go out and photograph city plants. And I don't know if you can read it all the way in the back, but it just says that this plant is getting water out of the cracks in the concrete. So this is taken from a young child's perspective, and they're seeing how plants meet their needs in this ecosystem. Here's another one. The student who took this photograph is making an inference that perhaps roly-poly bugs might be hiding under the leaves in this habitat and finding safety from predators. And here's one of those foundations for climate literacy that plants, animals, and humans depend on the land and water to live and to grow. And then this is a drawing that one of our users submitted from that digital badging feature that I showed you a few minutes ago. And in this one as well, we're seeing some feedback about what this plant needs to grow in its environment. And then here are two of the standards out of NGSS for the K through 2 grade band that we're hoping to achieve. Like Brian talked about before, you know, we don't talk about changes in seasons all at once. We build up by layers. And so we start at the very beginning with just learning how do plants and animals and people survive in their habitats. And kids are showing us, they're kind of teaching us through these apps how that works. We're letting them be the teachers. Another one is that weather is a combination of factors. Notice that we don't even introduce the word climate at this young age. We'll get there, you know, in grades 3 to 5, I believe that's when climate comes into play. But by just having kids pay attention to the weather, we're also laying some foundation for them. So here, for example, in the photo app, we just asked to take a picture of something dry. And the feedback that we got from this user, well, it didn't rain for 1 or 2 weeks, and this is what it looked like. And here from our digital badging is a photograph, a drawing that someone submitted about what clouds were doing. And you'll see here that the feedback that this user sent us is that the clouds were moving very fast. There was just a hurricane. So there's some great observation and connection to data right there that this young child is showing us through this image that he or she sent in. And we also like to see evidence that families and kids are just having fun using these resources. That's part of the goal too, you know, behind Richard Louv's message of getting kids outside is just enjoying your time in nature and having fun out there. I don't know if you can read the bottom there, but they noticed that most of the animals were hiding probably because they were being really noisy. And finally, we get a lot of these pictures too. When you give a kid a camera and you send them outside, you're going to get pictures of animal poop. All right, and I think I'll wrap on this slide because I can see that I've gone over my time here. We've also done some evaluation of Plum Landing, and we've been really thrilled to see that it's having an impact. We're seeing that kids who have been using our resources are showing a growth in their environmental science content understanding, and also with their parents as well. They're gaining some understanding of the environment, environmental science, and even just comfort in going outdoors and exploring with their children. I think that's another great foundation to think about, is that connection with parents. All right, I think I'll wrap it up here. This is my contact information if anyone needs to reach me, and I'm going to wrap it up there and let Heather take over. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenny.